You know, I think about us, the three of us, what we could be. I think about it all the time.
Please. It's terrible.
No, it's not. I know June. She's my friend. I care about her. How's your day going? You look pretty.
Thanks. I wore it just for you. Her father's a driver named Nick. He helped me to survive. Yes, you can, because I can't lose you.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
What about you?
Your girlfriend is a badass.
Welcome to Above the Garage, a Nick and June, the Handmaid's Tale podcast. Hi, friends. Welcome to our deep dive into season 2, episode 2 of The Handmaid's Tale, entitled Unwomen. This one will be full of spoilers because we're going to talk about it in the context of the show to date, which is through season 4. So let's do our round of introductions.
Hi, I'm Ginger.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, I'm Violet.
Hi, I'm Scarlett.
Hi, I'm Kimberly.
I'm Claudia.
And I'm Kate. The beginning, biggest parallel to me was the whole beginning speech, the monologue she does saying that Gilead never leaves you. And that is what we see throughout all of season 4. She's still very much mentally in the Gilead headspace. And she even leaves her ear tag on. It's just, it's very clear they're trying to show us that this statement is true. What does it matter even if you do get out?
The theme of freedom is always it's always there throughout the whole series, you know? And right. I think it was interesting because in her speech at the beginning of this episode, she compares being in that truck to being in an elevator with open sides, which reminded me of her being in the elevator in that hotel when she's free in Canada, but she clearly doesn't feel free.
Yeah, she looks miserable.
What we see in season 4, when she actually gets out of there, like you can tell like Gilead is in her, and basically she sort of acknowledges it, especially in the end, in the finale when she kills Fred.
There we go, and Sarah. You got us there. We always talk about it.
Yes. Yeah.
We have to.
And then they when they hung his body there, like we have all these newses in these first two episodes of season 2, both in the first episode and then this one. And then you can see in season 4, episode 10, Fred's body hanging there.
The best news yet. It even reminds me of Marissa Tomei because, you know, Emily murdered her and put her out for show.
That was my one note was about Emily, just the fact that in this episode, Emily is so like stone cold.
Yeah. And
June at this point hasn't done anything that intense yet.
Right.
And then at the end and season, you know, we're going back to the finale again, but when June kills Fred and it's like immediately like, yeah, Emily has got this. She can help me with this.
And she gets it so much because that conversation between them when she's like, I want him to be scared. And she's like, more than that, right? Like she
knows.
They get each other.
I just liked seeing, like thinking back because I had kind of forgotten that Emily was so much more ruthless before June was.
Yeah. I mean, she's already like run over that Guardian too. So she
right.
Awesome.
Yeah. And the thing on the cross as well. I mean, June displays Fred hanging on the wall and Emily displays the wife by hanging on the cross. They are definitely in the same headspace then. And I think Emily was rebellious way before June. So she already was in Mayday probably the whole time. And June didn't start that before, so.
Yeah, and June was still saying, I'm not that kind of person.
And,
Emily was pretty quickly that type of person, you know?
The whole like displaying the bodies of the people you killed, it continues to be them giving Gilead what they've been served from Gilead. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Good
They're
point.
giving
The
it back.
wall. Yeah. This is how we do things then. And then Emily as a whole, Emily and Sylvia, because you see more of the Gilead thing stuck inside you. You see her struggling in Canada, not as much as June, but you know, she's not sleeping with Sylvia yet. And I remember when Luke was really annoyed was that with her for not calling Sylvia right away?
Yeah.
And he got really pissed off, but because he doesn't get it. But Gilead is, you know, it's stuck in you, and it's changed her so much that she wasn't ready to go back and pretend to be old Emily married to Sylvia.
Did Sylvia know that Emily was back already?
No,
I don't think so.
Because you know when Luke and Moira, so I was thinking, was she not, you know?
I don't think they make that clear, but they make it clear that Emily reached out to her
when she
like not the other way around. But they're
Yeah.
also, I think it wasn't in season 3 that what is it, the Swiss, I think, are grilling Emily on the things she's
that she
done,
did.
and Sylvia finds out and doesn't judge her for it.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see the other side of it. You know, you see them at the airport now, and then in season 4, you see them trying to reacclimate, and Oliver's grown up.
My favorite parallel is when Nick and June are fighting, and he says to her, "I'm trying to keep you alive." And I immediately thought of episode 402 when he arrests her and he bends down and puts his fist on her and says, "I'm trying to keep you alive." Like that's always what his goal has been, you know, since
That is literally his primary motivation in life.
Yeah. And the stubborn thing, right?
Yeah, you're so fucking stubborn. And then at the reunion in 4-9, she's saying,
Oh.
he says, "You want to come say hi?" And the baby says no. And June says, "She's stubborn." And he says, "I'm not surprised." And she says, "How dare you?" Adorably, like really cute banter. And they're obviously thinking back to this moment as well as other moments, like her failure to escape the second time.
Yeah.
Well, I think he also like isn't in this episode, he's annoyed that with her stubbornness. But then as the series progresses, it's like he just accepts it, like this is how she is. And I think he ends up loving that about her.
Right. It's a big part of her. So if
And
it didn't, it'd be a problem.
I love that when they remember this moment back in when they meet up in 409, that it doesn't seem like they remember it badly.
No,
it's just a cute, really beautiful memory because they were free for the first time together.
Well, that's what's so interesting about the Boston Globe, because it starts out so traumatic.
Yeah.
Like I just think of how the look on her face when she realizes what happened there, but then it ends up being like probably the happiest time they had at Gilead together.
And even though they fought before, but it ends in such a beautiful moment, being free together.
It's clearly a fond memory for them. Like this fight and this, whole scene at the Boston Globe that we love is also a fond memory to them. I would love to see more of the Boston Globe than we get to, but like you said, Ginger, the last scene you see of them there is just such comfortable, like couple intimacy. He brings her coffee. They're living life like normally for a minute. I love that they got that 2 months together, and I think it did a lot for their relationship going forward.
Well, the scripts even mention, I mean, I'm sure we'll mention this in the episode, but I think it's in the 204. The scripts mention like it was like they were a real couple at that point, like an actual, dating without having to worry about Gilead
and death. Right.
Another note I had too was that I really loved the fight between Nick and June, just because, well, we never see Nick really show much emotion or get angry. So it really shows how scared he is. I just think of all of their fights that they've had in this show. Not that they've had a lot, but every time they have like a disagreement or anything, it's always based on fear. So like they have the argument in the first episode of season 3 when she comes back. She was supposed to escape with Polly and then comes back, and he's pissed at her because, she let Emily take their baby. And again, they're arguing because they're scared, and then the same thing in episode 3 of season 3 when he tells her he's going to war, and then she's kind of mean to him, and then they immediately forgive each other, and he gets her, and again they're fighting just because they're scared.
And he knows because he waits outside the door. Like he knows it's likely that she's going to come around. She just needs to calm down. She's just so like fiery and impulsive.
And I also think too of like how he's so soft spoken most of the time, except for this fight, really. And I love that about him and about them, because he raises her voice in this argument, but other than that, like he speaks so quietly. Like I think of on the bridge in season 4 where she's crying about Hannah, and he's almost whispering, like mumbling, like, "Hey, listen to me," and she just stops and she listens to him. Like he doesn't need to shout at her to get her to hear him, and then I was also reminded too, like when she hears him come into the Boston Globe and she's got the hammer and she's terrified, and he says June in that way that he says her name, and it brought me right to episode 409 when he says her name, and you see that peace like every time.
He's like her home.
Can I also mention how great it was to see Max and Lizzie do this together, such a scene. Only that one time when they like broke up, but it wasn't a real fight. But to see them really going at it,
yelling at each other,
and even though they are such good friends, and I heard an interview of him saying that this is the part that is harder for them to do because they have to go down on their romantic chemistry to do this part, and they nailed it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I love watching this fight scene. I don't know if that happens with other romantic couples that I like, but this one is perfect to me.
But they also fight fair though.
Yes.
Like they don't name call. They don't, like, even though like Nick is pissed at her, he still calms down and tries to talk to her, like tries to reason with her. And I think, you know, she's kind of pissed at him too, because I mean, he kind of doesn't really say the best words either. He's like, you know, we got to be patient, which telling a woman who's in this place where people have been murdered, like, oh, you got to be patient and just hang out here for a few weeks, like probably not the best way to say that, but like she stops and listens to him too, even though she's pissed off, you know.
Yeah, they do both listen to each other.
He's not threatening when he's, you know, when they're mad at each other. Like in a future episode, I have a parallel with Luke with that, with the yelling and stuff, which I think is interesting. But he's never threatening, even when he's yelling, which is something that's very interesting. And that's what I like too about the fight, the balance that they have, and how he's more calm. Instead of telling her, you need to calm down and listen to me in a commanding way, he just lets her vent away and go crazy. You guys know, obviously June's a victim of sexual abuse. So it's always interesting to me how she's able to have that connection with Nick. Obviously, we've said many times before that he's the only person that she feels comfortable with. But she has this ability, obviously that's what Gilead does, for her to be able to detach herself from ceremonies, even though we've clarified that they are still rape. But, she's had those routine rapes. And then in season 2, she gets violently raped with Fred, which I think that was, kind of pushed her into another direction. But then in season 3, we don't see it, but she's still able to be intimate with Nick, because I'm assuming the closed door and the lock is to signal that happened.
Yeah, definitely.
And then she's forced to have that ceremony with Lawrence, which, she does that switch again when she tells Lawrence, like, we have to do this. But when she gets to Chicago and they're having this dynamic with the guy, I forget his name, and the guy tells him, like, well, thank you. Somebody's going to have to do a favor. She's not able to do it. She can't do it. Even though she's been detached so many times before, once she gets to Chicago, she can't do it. And obviously when she gets to Canada, she cannot connect. She doesn't have that intimacy there, except when, she sees Nick in 409, and the intimacy is there, like nothing happened. So obviously the show has shown us that safety and that security that she has for her to express herself sexually, or to be vulnerable, or to be herself, is only with Nick.
Which that's powerful, though, to show that for someone who's been through what she's been through, he's her escape and she can be vulnerable. I mean, being vulnerable is hard enough when you don't have tons of trauma consuming you. And the fact that she's got so much trauma and she could still let him trade back the dominance and the submissiveness, and just to be able to do that with somebody, I just think is very powerful.
Well, it shows he's not part of her trauma. Like, yes, he's in Gilead, but she doesn't see him as a trauma in her life.
I just have one more thing, which shows how good the show is at continuation of stuff. The fact that the relationship between Kit, the woman dying in the colonies, because she dies, I think, in the next episode, and you see her relationship to the I don't remember her name, the other woman, right in this episode, and I never noticed it. They were cuddling up in the background and helping each other out, and the beds were next to each other, so they really had a long time relationship there in the colonies.
The couple that gets married, or that they marry.
This couple. Yes. In the first time I watched the show, I was like, okay, those are two random women. They just pulled out now to have this scene, but no, they showed it before. It's like they're really good at showing it like really discreetly in the background, so you get a bit familiar with them before they make them come in for a bigger scene. So I really love that.
The planning and the setup of stuff for later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really good.
It's really good.
My next note just says biting, the Nick bite at the Boston Globe.
Doesn't she say something in season 1, something about don't bite?
He told Janine, you can't bite people.
You can't bite people.
Oh my God, yes.
And here she is. That Dave said that when we were watching. When she bit Nick, he's like, she really likes to bite people, doesn't she? She does, I think.
Yeah, but this was Janine, so maybe she got the idea.
There's a lot of biting floating around in the show.
That is correct. That's all we're saying.
Coming back to the fact that Lizzie suggested that they go at it a bit rougher. I mean, they only said that they will have sex. And all they did in the Boston Globe was probably Lizzie, Max, and Mike Barker deciding stuff together.
Yeah, that's amazing decisions they made together. So you're saying the script only says
it's a very simple, it's like a
Yeah.
line or two or something.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder though if part of that, because again, I fell through another rabbit hole yesterday, but I was watching interviews and there was one where Lizzie was talking about, she did like a round table like with a bunch of actresses for the Hollywood Reporter, and she was talking about how in her contract, like she has full approval over all of her nudity scenes, and she can cut anything and they can't do anything without her approval first. And she does mention that this show is the most collaborative one she's ever been on. I think that's why they don't write out the sex scenes. I think that's why Bruce or whoever just puts in like sex scene and then lets her figure out what she wants to do.
That's cool.
Because I know like in other shows that I've watched, they get very specific about what they want to happen. And obviously in this show, the sex scenes are very important to drive the story. So I think it's interesting. And I wonder I think that's the reason why they let her decide that with the director and Max.
That's really nice.
My last point, when Nick gives June his keys and the gun and completely like sacrifices himself just to let her have the power to make her own decisions. I think to one of my other favorite episodes, which is episode 9 in this season, where he comes and sees her after he comes back from Canada and brings back the message that Luke had gave her about he'll never stop loving her. And that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire, or one of my favorite episodes, I guess, in the entire series. Because again, he's so selfless. Like he meets June's husband. He doesn't have to come home and tell her everything that Luke said or, relay that message. And the fact that he does that, even though he knows it's going to break his own heart, it just shows his character. And that's what makes me really love him. And I just feel like this scene here where he gives her his keys and gun, like I don't know, it just shows his selflessness. And I think that's why we all love him so much. So
I think that is the primary reason we love him so much. I agree. Okay, so we had some technical difficulties we realized when we started editing our episode, and we had to re-record a couple bits just between me and Scarlett and me and Claudia. So sorry for the irregularities there. So Claudia, I think you talked a little bit in the spoiler-free about how amazing Alexis Bledel is.
Rory, yes.
In what is the show?
In Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, so she's only ever been Emily to me, but you said that you knew her as Rory for years, right?
Yeah.
And didn't think you could think of her otherwise?
Yes. Now she's Emily. There was even the reboot. It's not that long ago, so
Gilmore Girls. Was she in it?
Yeah, it can't. So that's why I say it's not her age, because of course in Gilmore Girls at first she was way younger than she's now, but in the reboot she is almost the same age as the start. Right. And still she even looks so different. I can't even
really.
Yeah.
I was looking at the art and making of The Handmaid's Tale, and they actually went after her because of her America's Sweetheart. Here's a quote from the book, Warren Littlefield. Bruce and I became thrilled and enchanted with the idea of casting America's Sweetheart, Littlefield remembered, and it was an idea to which Bialy and Thomas quickly came on board. So much of that role was about the eyes, Bialy explains, and I thought her eyes were just incredible. This was a role where you wanted to feel this person's pain, which you could do with just one look at her eyes. I got a boost knowing she would have the balls to be rebellious, stronger than we're used to seeing. So it's cool that they came after her, despite what you're saying, like Rory's pretty innocent, right?
Exactly, yes.
And Emily she seems innocent, but she's actually like vengeful and badass.
Badass, yes.
So incredible casting. And I know Bruce kept her around, even though Offglyn dies in the book. She hangs herself when the Eyes van comes so it would be in the first season of the show. So great idea keeping her around. She's amazing. And she's been nominated every year for an Emmy and won the first year. But in this episode, I love how shocking it is when she kills Marissa Tomei.
Yeah.
The first time you watched it, did you see that coming?
No, she played the helper so well. I really thought she was going to help her. So, I mean, we knew that she killed the Guardian before, so that it was not surprising that she can be like that, but still.
And there was more reason then, I guess, because she was in this car and she was clearly in a lot of trouble. So, but in this case, there's really like no reason to kill the wife.
Yeah, especially because all of them are in a place where they all are going to die anyway. So it was a bit like really a surprise.
No, I thought it was really great, the shock of that scene. And then also her lack of remorse is kind of notable too, because after Marissa Tomei, Mrs. O'Connor accepts that she's going to die. She's like, just stay and pray with me. And Emily's, what does she say? Like,
you deserve to die, Lennon.
Yeah, I love Emily. She's my favorite, I think, non-June female character.
Yeah, I'm undecided between her and Janine, but I think they are really close. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think? And then she almost like she tries to kill Aunt Lydia, right? In season 3,
yes.
It's not like she didn't stop short of killing her. She just didn't succeed.
Yeah.
And then with the Aunt Irene in season 4, who we find out outed her and her Martha in season 1, which is why her clit was removed and her girlfriend was hung. She was very remorseless there too. She didn't kill her, but when they ask about it after she's found her hanging, and Moira's like waiting to hear like how much it's upset her, she's like, I hope I had something to do with it.
Yeah, I think she would have wanted to do it on her own by herself by now. It's like, I mean, ever since she came to Canada, you can feel that just protesting and having survived is not enough for her. She wants revenge. She's full of hate and she can't stop. And at first I thought she can find an ally with Moira and Moira could help her, but apparently that did not work.
Yeah, I think all she needed was June to like reignite that. And I remember too, I can't remember if we discussed this, but when Moira and she are in jail after protesting, they're talking about their like crimes and people they killed. And Moira's like, well, have you killed anyone since you got out? And Emily says no. And so that's supposed to like clear her conscience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that's changed.
Yeah.
I love that scene in season 4 where she and June are just egging each other on about Fred, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And Luke's like looking on in the background, like completely alarmed. I like that scene a lot. I like how they bring it out in each other. But I'm curious what happens now in season 5. Like, do you think that her thirst for revenge will be quenched, Emily?
No, I think if it hasn't been with the Martha dying, now she's only back to being, hey, we can do this without getting any. So I think she will try to help June if June chooses the path of revenge, which I think she will. But
I'm pretty sure June's going that way. But they have the difference though in that, you know, Hannah's in Gilead, so you can't really rest if you're June. I mean, you can certainly more so than June's going to. And then with Emily, you know, Oliver being there is going to be stressful for her, whichever path she takes.
Yeah, I thought about this a bit. I think it's because Emily was always more rebellious. We talked about it before. She's like already there when June is still trying to not do that.
I'm not that type of person. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course Emily had no fucks to give back in Gilead because her family was out. It was only because he was only thinking of her own life, and apparently that didn't matter too much anymore.
Right.
So
it makes a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And June always had to think about Hannah, but now it's just that she was always so rebellious before in the life before. I don't think she can ever rest with them still being out. She has missed so much. She's happy because Oliver still knows who she is, because Sylvia had done such a good job with him.
Right. Pictures everywhere and everything.
Yeah. Still, she has lost so much time with him, at least 5 years, if my count is correct. It's a bit tricky. Yeah. We are back here again.
We won't try and work out the timeline, but yes, let's say 5 to 7 years. I mean, she's been four different people in Gilead. I didn't realize. She's been off Glenn, off Roy, off Stephen, and off Lawrence, off
Joseph.
I always think of him as Lawrence, but like, that's insane. That's crazy. And that's another case of her lack of remorse was it of Roy died of like a heart attack during the ceremony, and she kicks him in the balls instead of, as the wife is like running for help.
Yeah, I think
she does. And I find her lack of remorse fascinating.
Yeah, she's just vengeful. She doesn't give any fucks.
So it'll be so interesting to see what does happen in season 5 with her. Do you think that June would have killed Marissa Tomei the way that Emily did?
It depends. I think if June was there in the same time frame, she wasn't there at season 2. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I think.
She wouldn't have even thought about that.
Right.
Because she was actually trying to get through to Serena. So she thought that they all
are redeemable.
Find some redemption. Yeah. But now, no. And now I think because she really edged Emily on to be lashing out at the Martha.
At the aunt.
Yeah,
she was quite aggressive about that.
Yeah, and what I talked about with Scarlett before was that we think that Emily is just that more rebellious because she had more obstacles before, in the life before as well, because she was a female college professor and she was a lesbian. She had always something to fight about.
Right.
And she was always in that headspace, and June just had the easier life. Yeah, her mom tried to push her in that direction and showed her some things, but still June was just like, oh, I have it perfect like that, and I choose the
easy route, the easy path. Right. And Emily never had that option, even if she wanted to. And she pointed that out too, like not even talking about the homophobia yet, but when she's talking to this female student about how hard it is as a female and that it never gets better in the educational, professional field. So that is a good point. She kind of had to be. I don't know, there's something feisty in her that I love. And it's just different than June, sort of.
I found it interesting to see her progression later in season 3, that when she came to Canada, she actually tried to be good and to not be revengeful and to live a life again without fighting.
Gilead.
Yeah. And she really tried to push it down, but then it started a bit with the protesting. Moira pushed her back in a bit, and then she probably realized there that she just can't stop, that this is the only thing she wants to do. She wants to fight against Gilead still.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if, because she's a cell biologist, and I feel like that's been like pushed kind of hard. I wonder if that will come into whatever she does in the future. I guess it helps her with medicine and the colonies, but I wonder if it'll help her with some sort of like weaponry or.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be cool.
I mean, it's all open. We have no hint at her in the books, of course, because she's dead. So it's all out in the open, and I'm really curious.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. And because it's a show, I'm just gonna have to root for her to go like full on rebel with June.
Yeah,
that's what I want to watch. Versus, we know that Luke and Moira and Rita will probably be doing the domestic thing in Canada. I'd be down with seeing Emily going the rebel route. Apologies to Sylvia and Oliver. You deserve better. But since it's a TV show.
Yeah. We want some action.
I do. And she's just so badass. I love her. I read in an article also last week that was fascinating to me was kind of how Boston Globe is almost like a purgatory in this episode versus the colonies being quite hellish, and it reminded me even, I mean, for one thing, June is very uncomfortable because she has to wait here, right? That's why she's fighting with Nick and she's upset because it's a very uncomfortable place to wait. She's trying to get to Canada, aka like heaven, but you have to sit here and wait first. And so that's like purgatory. And then the colonies, obviously, it's just not a hard sell, but it's a very like hellish landscape visually as well. Like the people on the horses and even the workers are carrying these tools that, like I said in the last episode, remind me of like the Grim Reaper. So yeah, I wish I had noticed that on my own, but reading about it made a lot of sense with the way that they played those over each other in this episode.
Yeah, I agree.
And the other Boston Globe note that Marigold made to me earlier was that it's interesting that the Boston Globe is the paper that blew open the Catholic sex scandal. And, sex abuse is pretty relevant to this show. So I wonder if that was just a coincidence or if it had any part in the decision of using the Boston Globe.
I never thought about that, to be
honest. I had not either.
Who wrote this episode again? I know who directed it, but
I think Bruce himself. Let me see. Yeah,
wow.
Bruce Miller. I know, it's such a good episode. Well done, sir. And yeah, and Mike Barker is apparently like the sex director. Well done, Mike Barker. It's just a great episode. I love this one.
Yeah, me too.
I came across this review that said something about you notice that she's in the Boston Globe in minute 21st when you see the press stopped. And then I remembered, because I had just rewatched it, that actually that's not true. You realize she's in the Boston Globe when she rolls the door down after the old man drops her off, and you see the words, the Boston Globe.
Right.
And I like how in those first two episodes they kind of did this homage to Boston. First, I know we talked about Fenway Park in the past episode.
Quick note on that too. We had said that the Joe Buck clip was from the Boston Red Sox breaking the curse, but that game was away. And I saw a comment by Kiki on this article at the bottom that said that clip was actually from 2013 when the Red Sox won the World Series at home at Fenway Park. So just wanted to correct that.
And they also did the same with the Boston Globe. They had to ask permission to be able to use the logo and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I found out that they filmed this actually in a small local Ontario newspaper called the Hamilton Spectator. And they actually left the newspaper that they did as a prop in one of the desks. And I found it on Twitter, but it's also in the book, The Art and Making of the Handmaid's Tale. And you can actually read what they wrote because they actually did a newspaper. They put a newspaper together trying to kind of build a timeline for Gilead. It's a very subtle timeline. And they actually ran the print as well in order to be able to have that image of the printing stopping at that precise moment where we obviously know that they probably came in and killed everybody.
Right.
Yeah. A few things that caught my attention was the newspaper's dated September 15th, 2014. So it's already established that the takeover happened in 2014 and in September. Mm-hmm. And there is this thing I wanted to read. They've been under martial law a little bit over a week. So we can assume that the takeover happened beginning of September. So I'm trying to build a timeline, which is impossible, but I'm stubborn.
That does check out with the chip line in season 4, the 7 years. A lot has changed in 7 years with the chips.
And actually in the book, you can actually see the clippings that they did for June to cut. I think we see that in episode 3. When she's putting the things together, they did those clippings so that you more or less can have an order of the events. Again, very vague. But a few clippings caught my attention. There's one that actually talks about the chips. It says you cannot expect to get pregnant by eating processed foods. So I'm thinking just like with the birth control that they were lost before, more or less, maybe they changed the laws for that because of the fertility crisis. There's another one that talks about the Sons of Jacob's monitoring programs, because we know that's what the Sons of Jacob did, charity, society help. They actually raised a lot of money after the events for the victims. And there was one that said teen mother released from jail following miscarriage scare, which is news reports that we've actually heard recently in the news, so it's not, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
So they did all that in order for her to put all that together. And I thought it was very, very interesting the way they did, that parallel, the Boston Globe and the death of the Free Press, which is very, very sad.
I think it's great. The details they put into this show, they put all those papers together. That's amazing.
Yeah. And also with the shoe, I realized that there were women that got slaughtered there. And June got fired after her job. So, after the takeover, I'm sorry. So we do know that this massacre in the Boston Globe happened fairly quickly after the takeover. That's just how you obviously cut the flow of information. So, but
they were watching. Okay, no, that makes sense. Sorry, they were watching the news report of the takeover, but that was a week before the journalists were.
Oh, now that you mentioned that, yeah, that's true. When she was listening to that, it said that there was a bomb in the White House, and in the newspaper clipping, it says that the president died of a gunshot wound. So, if the president was in the White House and the bomb didn't kill him, they executed him. Yeah, the gunshot was to the shoulder. It doesn't say it was to the head, but, I remember, that the news report saying that it was a bomb in the White House and the shooting was in the Congress.
That's interesting. Good attention to detail.
All right, I think that's a wrap on our deep dive into season 2, episode 2 of The Handmaid's Tale. Come find us next week when we talk about season 2, episode 3 on Monday with our spoiler free and on Wednesday with our deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
I think about us, the three of us, what we could be. I think about it all the time.
Please. It's terrible.
No, it's not. I know June. She's my friend. I care about her. How's her day going? You look pretty.
Thanks. I wore it just for you. Her father's a driver named Nick. He helped me to survive. Yes, you can, because I can't lose you.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
What about you?
Your girlfriend is a badass.